We often describe the ocean in these grand, romantic terms: Earth's last great wilderness, a place of mystery and wonder.
Hmm.
But here's the startling practical fact the book opens with: that wilderness is also our planetary life support system.
Our literal life support system.
It regulates our climate, it stores enormous amounts of carbon, and it generates over half the air we breathe. It's just staggering.
It really is.
So the question is, how does an author take something that vast, that fundamental, and use both wonder and alarm to force us to protect something we barely understand?
That's the mission.
That's our mission today. We're looking at David Attenborough's Ocean, Earth's Last Wilderness, co-authored with Colin Buttfield.
A really timely book.
And we want you to enjoy a bold new take on book coverage with this extended analysis. This is more than just a summary.
Right.
We're examining how the author shapes their argument, builds influence, and earns, or maybe loses, your trust.
Giving you the tools for sharper insight.
Exactly. So should you read this book, this analysis will certainly help. It's also, I think, excellent for aspiring writers.
For sure. And just so you know, you are experiencing a unique two-host AI conversation powered by Google's Notebook LM for a deeper, more dynamic analysis of the book's core arguments.
The authors position this book as, well, as urgently needed.
It is. The climate and biodiversity crisis has intensified so rapidly. And the oceans, they're not some side issue. They are absolutely central.
Central to what specifically?
To climate regulation, carbon storage, oxygen production. I mean, to really grasp the stakes, you have to recognize the scale.
We're not just talking about preserving a beautiful view.
No, we're talking about the health of a global mechanism.
So the core thesis is immediately clear, but it's also heavily conditional.
Very conditional.
The oceans are critically endangered, facing these huge threats from warming, pollution, but, and this is the key part, they show this remarkable resilience if humanity chooses to act now.
Right, if we act decisively.
Yeah.
That structure is vital. This isn't just a scientific overview.
No, it's advocacy.
It's nonfiction environmental advocacy. It strategically fuses accessible popular science.
The biology, the chemistry.
Right, with these really personal memoir vignettes from Attenborough's own career. And it's all wrapped around a direct, policy-oriented warning.
And the objectives of the project are really twofold, aren't they? It has to inform people about ocean ecology, of course.
Naturally.
But more than that, it aggressively reframes the oceans. It says this is not a limitless resource or a trash can.
It's our indispensable planetary life support system.
And that reframing leads straight to persuasion.
Exactly. They have to convince readers, non-specialist readers, that large-scale protection and restoration are both necessary and, crucially, still achievable.
So who is this book for, then?
It's for someone who, enjoys nature storytelling, wants to be informed, but maybe doesn't fully grasp the systemic stakes of ocean decline.
From overfishing, plastics, warming seas, all of it.
All of it, the whole picture.
Now, to persuade a global audience of something so huge, you have to establish trust immediately. That's the foundation. Credibility.
Ethos.
And Attenborough enters the conversation with almost unparalleled credibility. He's the acclaimed natural historian. He's filmed in literally every major ocean habitat on Earth.
And that lifetime of experience it's his rhetorical weapon.
Okay.
His ethos is anchored in his persona as this calm, trustworthy guide.
He's not an alarmist.
No, he's an observer who has watched the environment change for 60 years. His career provides this eyewitness continuity from a much less disturbed ocean to the visible degradation of today.
And the implication of that is just so powerful. If this man, this seasoned, measured observer who has seen more of the world than almost anyone,
If he is now sounding an unambiguous alarm.
the situation has to be truly grave.
Exactly. And adding Colin Buttfield, the co-author, who has this strong background in environmental advocacy, that signals something else. It signals that the argument is serious and policy-minded. It's not just a collection of nice stories.
Yeah.
It tells you from the start, we are here to talk about solutions.
So let's move from that credibility to the substance of the argument, the logical grounding, the logos. I think the book is successful because the logic is so focused on self-preservation, not just conservation for its own sake.
It's not just about saving pretty fish.
It's about making sure we survive.
And they deliver that logic through these detailed, clear explanations of the science. Take the ocean's biological pump.
That sounds very technical.
It is, but they make it so accessible. Phytoplankton, tiny organisms on the surface, absorb carbon dioxide like trees. When they die, they sink, and they drag that carbon down to the deep sea.
Taking it out of circulation.
For centuries, the strategy is to ground this big environmental concern in tangible human realities.
Right, they connect abstract processes like that pump or deep ocean currents.
And they tie them directly to things we all care about. Food security, coastal safety from storms, and yes, the very air we breathe.
So it moves the argument from do the right thing to do the necessary thing for your own survival.
That's it. The link between marine health and stable weather is presented as just non-negotiable science.
But how do you keep a reader's attention across a whole book of complex science while you're touring the entire global ocean? That's where the structure is just so masterful.
It really is. It adopts a structure that feels both immersive and manageable. It's organized spatially.
Taking us through 8 major ocean habitats.
Right. Coral reefs, the deep, the open ocean, kelp forests, the Arctic, mangroves, oceanic islands and seamounts, and finally, the wild Southern Ocean.
And that habitat by habitat tour, it's pure Attenborough. It aligns perfectly with the documentary conventions he mastered decades ago.
It really does. It makes you feel like you're traveling with him, absorbing all this complex science in these digestible chunks.
And inside that larger structure, there's a repeating rhythm in almost every chapter.
A narrative rhythm, yes. They introduce a challenge, say coral bleaching. They explain the habitat's ecological role, detail the human impact, and then
they pivot sharply
to signs of resilience or recovery?
That rhythm has to be deliberate. It creates this constant balance between crisis and possibility, which is essential for managing the reader's emotional response, the pathos.
It is. If it were only crisis, you'd just sink into despair, into paralysis.
So the pathos works through 3 forces. The first is pure wonder.
The lush, vivid descriptions of creatures and ecosystems.
Then there's genuine loss. The devastating accounts of deep-sea trawling, the plastic pollution.
The collapsing habitats like the Great Barrier Reef.
And then the third force, and this is the most critical one for their mission, is hope.
Yes. The book deliberately highlights the ocean's remarkable resilience. It gives concrete recovery stories.
Like the return of large marine animals to protected areas in Palau.
Or the incredible speed the damaged mangroves can regrow if you just give them a chance.
So that choice to emphasize resilience, it ensures readers feel a sense of agency, not just despair.
It keeps the emotional intensity geared towards action. It moves you from sorrow to motivation. That shift is the engine of the book's purpose.
And if you're finding this expanded format valuable and want to dig into more of these techniques, remember to check out Mindful Moments. That's our YouTube channel offering AI book analysis, summaries, and critiques, all designed to inspire reflection and rational thought.
Let's talk about the style.
Right. When you're writing advocacy, the science can't feel like a textbook.
Precisely. And the prose is a very skillful mix. It combines this accessible scientific exposition,
like explaining how noise pollution affects whale communication,
with these deeply personal stories from Attenborough's career and historical episodes, too. That mix keeps the technical stuff readable and preserves the narrative momentum.
And the power of contrast is so central to their style, it makes the damage impossible to ignore.
The imagery creates a moral and visual shock.
You read about a pristine coral ecosystem, and on the very next page, they'll juxtapose it with a sea floor scraped clean by trawling nets.
Or a plastic-choked oceanic gyre. It forces you into this realization. The degradation is unnatural. It's preventable. It's a choice, not an inevitability.
And this whole rhetorical effect, it all synthesizes into what we're calling the conditional blueprint.
That's a great way to put it. That recurring forward-looking move to what could still be if we protect 30% of the ocean, if we regulate deep-sea mining, if we halt plastic flow. It works like a reframe.
It stops the book from becoming an elegy for what we've lost.
And transforms it into a practical, conditional blueprint for action. The thesis is reinforced again and again. The oceans are still Earth's last wilderness, but they are absolutely not an inexhaustible one.
The book is at its most effective, where that deep credibility, the vivid emotional appeals, and the clear scientific explanations all converge.
And show that ocean health underpins everything.
Climate stability, food systems, breathable air, they make the health of plankton your personal concern.
And while some readers might feel a little overwhelmed by the sheer density of detail, they cover so much, from currents to pollutants to policy.
It is a lot.
It is. But the sustained emphasis on resilience and the possibility of a recoverable future overcomes that risk. The book lands as a comprehensive regent call to collective responsibility.
Not just a catalog of disaster.
Exactly.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to consider. Attenborough and Butfield successfully lowered the cognitive barriers to understanding complex ocean science, while at the same time raising the ethical and survival stakes for every person on Earth.
Mhm.
So what really is the difference between a natural history book and policy advocacy? And can the two ever truly be separated when the topic is, quite literally, our planetary life support system?
That is a profound question. And if this analysis has sparked your curiosity and you want to delve deeper, click the link on screen for the in-depth book summary. Subscribe, share, purchase via the link, and remember to think rationally.
See the many genre-based book analyses at Mindful Moments. Subscribe and nourish your mind on the go.